I knew John Chambers very well, and Werner. I knew a lot of the makeup guys, Danny Streepak. I mean, I used to hang out on the Planet of the Apes stuff, and so I was really into that stuff. And I tried to get people to make the original conception for Schlock was a bad gorilla suit. I went, at one point I was Don Post Studios in Burbank, or where is it? They made those pullover rubber masks they used to sell on Hollywood Boulevard. And he wanted like $100,000 or something. And the budget was 60, so it was like, no. But as I was leaving, Don Post Jr., who was painting a mask, said to me, and I came over and he said, there was a kid in here who's really talented, and gave me the card that said Rick Baker, Monster Maker. And it had his mother's phone number. And I, okay, this Don Post Jr., he must know something. So I called him, and he said, come out. So we drove out to his parents' house. Rick had spectacular parents, Ralph and them. Anyway, drove out to the house, which was a total lower, like a blue-collar neighborhood, and we go out there, and we go into Rick. Rick is this kid with, bad skin and very long hair and very shy. I heard later you were absolutely terrified by me because I used the F word, But we went back into his bedroom. He was an only child. His father was a good, fine painter, and encouraged Rick's interest in makeup. And in his room, like a lot of kids, he had, masks and models and things he had done. Now, I'd been around professional movies now for 4 or 5 years. 5 years, and I'd worked. And I never forget it. I pulled Jim aside. I said, this kid is really good. I mean, the work was extraordinary. And he made all the molds for Schlock in his mom's oven. And she complained for years that her pies smelled like foam rubber. But anyway, I gave him the script of American Werewolf then.
We both were big fans of the Wolfman and Jekyll and Hyde and all, and transformations on screen. But John said, it just didn't make sense to him that you would sit in a chair and be still until you changed into a werewolf, and he wanted to show the pain.
In London, they used to have cartoon cinemas, which were small theaters that showed cartoons and newsreels and commercials, and parents would, if they were shopping on the high street, they would drop their kids off there, so there'd be like homeless guys out of the cold, and children watching these cartoons. And when I worked in London, I would go to the cartoon cinemas, the Arrow Cinema in Piccadilly, which is in the movie and stuff, because they showed, this is before home, you have to remember, before home video, before this stuff was accessible. But they would show gorgeous prints of Chuck Jones and, Bob Clampett and Tex Avery cartoons. So I would go see these. I remember the Bond folks all thought I was nuts, but I'd go see them. And so when I wrote, in the script, was the first, it's a cartoon. He's seeing a Roadrunner cartoon, and it's children, and in many ways it's kind of creepier. But so in 1981, by the time I got, I go back to London, and no more cartoon cinemas, and the only ones left were now porno theaters. So that's the only difference.
He changed my life in so many ways. I mean, it'll probably say in my tombstone, this is the guy who did American Werewolf in London makeup, and because of John, I got Thriller and Coming to America and Nutty Professor and all these movies that have been so important in my life. And it's also because of John I actually met my wife, and I have these two beautiful daughters. I mean, well, he was not the father of my daughters, but that's how So I mean, John's very special in my life.
Actually, what's very cool is Rick's wife Sylvia was a hairdresser on a movie I made called Into the Night, and she said, I often put the crew in the movie as actors, and I had Rick played a drug dealer. We were on Hollywood Boulevard. There's a scene with Michelle Pfeiffer and Jeff Goldblum where Rick he's very good too, and he's trying to sell him some drugs, and I needed some hookers, so I said, the hairdresser, I go, oh, Sylvia, you be a hooker. So I have this wonderful photograph of this real sleazy drug dealer and this hooker on Hollywood Boulevard. That's how they met.